The abandoned house stood like a hollowed-out monument to years of mystery. Detective James Harper, his hand trembling, took in the sight of the blood-splattered walls. The pungent metallic scent of death lingered, clinging to the damp air. His eyes scanned the room, finally resting on the cryptic message scrawled in haste. "You found the truth, but the truth is a lie." Harper's breath caught in his throat as the message seemed to mock him. He had seen countless crime scenes, but this felt different, personal. This house, its decaying timbers and peeling paint, whispered secrets of an era long gone. His partner, Officer Rachel Wilson, stood at the doorway, her gaze fixed on him with concern. She asked, "What do you think it means?" Harper clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "It means we're just getting started." The weight of the case pressed down on him. The message hinted at something darker, something that had been carefully concealed. As the flashlight flickered, shadows danced along the walls, and for a fleeting moment, Harper felt the eyes of the past staring back at him. Harper stood motionless, the weight of the moment pressing on him. His partner, Rachel, broke the silence, her voice a soft tremor. "James, we need to talk about the last victim." Harper's eyes narrowed as he turned to face her. "Not now," he muttered, his voice strained. "We're close, Rachel. We can't let this go." The air between them thickened, filled with an unspoken tension. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're obsessed with this case. It's taking a toll on you, and you're shutting everyone out." Harper ran a hand through his hair, frustration rising within him. I can't let go, Rachel. This house, these people, it's all connected. It's all part of the same thing." He paused, his gaze lingering on the floor. "I'm not walking away from this, not until I understand everything." Rachel sighed, her shoulders slumping. She knew Harper wasn't ready to listen, but she also knew he was too far in to turn back now. The silence that followed was heavy, both Harper and Rachel standing in the dark room, surrounded by the house's haunting stillness. Harper's eyes never left the blood-stained wall. "This house, it's been a place of death for years," he murmured, almost to himself. Rachel stepped forward, her voice breaking through his trance. "We don't know that for sure. We only have a few cases linking." Harper turned to face her, his expression intense. "It's more than that. The same patterns, the same darkness. Someone's been using this place for decades." He paused, as if hearing something only he could understand. "This isn't just a crime scene, it's a message." Rachel hesitated, glancing around the room, the shadows playing tricks on her mind. "And what do you think it's telling us, James?" Harper's gaze locked on hers, his eyes filled with an almost eerie certainty. "That we've been walking in the dark for too long, and now we're about to uncover everything." The weight of his words hung in the air, chilling and unyielding. Rachel swallowed, uneasy, but resolute. "We'll find the truth, together." Harper's hand hovered over the phone, unsure whether to call for backup or to continue alone. The house felt like a trap, drawing him in deeper with every creak of its old wooden floorboards. "Harper, don't do this alone," Rachel's voice echoed in his mind, but he refused to look away. This was his fight now. "We're close," he muttered, dialing the number for his captain. The phone rang, the sound far too loud in the oppressive silence of the house. "Captain, we have a lead." "No, it's bigger than that. You need to send someone out here," he spoke hurriedly. But before he could finish, the line went dead. A static-filled silence followed, amplifying his growing sense of unease. Harper cursed under his breath and pocketed the phone. "It's always something." Rachel's voice broke through the tension. "James, we're not alone here." She had been standing motionless by the doorway. Harper turned, only to see her pointing towards the far end of the room, where someone, was moving in the shadows. The figure in the corner moved again, the sound of its soft, deliberate steps sending a jolt of panic through Harper's chest. "Who's there?" Harper shouted, his voice breaking the silence with a force that made his own pulse race. There was no response, only the sound of shuffling and a faint creak of the floorboards. Rachel stepped closer, her hand gripping her weapon. "Be ready," she whispered. Harper's hand instinctively moved to his holster, the weight of the gun comforting yet unsettling. The figure finally emerged from the shadows, revealing a tall man in his 50s, disheveled and gaunt, his clothes torn and covered in dirt. His eyes were wide, as if he had been living in the house for months. No, years. "You shouldn't be here," the man rasped, his voice dry and strained. "You don't want to know what's inside." Harper's pulse quickened as he took a step forward. "What are you talking about?" The man trembled, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "The truth," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The truth is worse than you think." Detective Harper sat in his car, the flickering streetlight casting long shadows across his face. The memory of the abandoned house, its cryptic message, and the strange man lingered in his mind. Rachel had insisted they go over the case files again, but Harper knew that their next step was more than just paperwork. They had to understand the connection, the dark thread that tied all these events together. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the street ahead, the silence of the night surrounding him. "I never asked for this," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "But I'm here now, and I'm not walking away." Rachel's voice interrupted his thoughts. "James, we're not walking away, but you're too focused on the past. We need to move forward. There's more to this than just one house." Harper clenched his jaw. "I know, Rachel, but this house holds the key. I can feel it." He turned to look at her, his eyes hard with determination. "We'll find the answers, one way or another." Harper and Rachel entered the station, greeted by the usual buzz of activity. Officers moved between desks, phones rang incessantly, and the hum of everyday police work filled the air. But for Harper, it all felt like background noise. His mind was still on the abandoned house, still on the cryptic message and the strange man. He needed answers. As they walked to their desks, Harper's partner, Officer Rachel Wilson, placed the case files in front of him. "We've got new leads, James," she said, her voice steady but filled with an undertone of concern. "The house, the victims, they're all tied to something much bigger than we thought." Harper glanced at the case files, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Rachel hesitated before answering. "There's something in the history of the house. It's not just a random location. People have been disappearing for years, and there's a connection to someone powerful." Harper's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" he asked, his voice low, his mind racing. "A man named Martin Blackwell." Harper sat at his desk, flipping through the case files, his mind barely registering the details. The name Martin Blackwell echoed in his head, over and over again. He had heard of him before. Blackwell was a wealthy businessman, involved in real estate and various high-profile ventures. But he wasn't just any businessman. There were whispers, rumors about his connections to dark dealings, shady transactions, and a string of disappearances that stretched back decades. Harper's fingers drummed against the desk as he stared at the photo of Blackwell, trying to connect the dots. Rachel leaned over his shoulder, her voice soft but insistent. "James, there's more. Blackwell isn't just a businessman. He's involved in something much darker, and he's tied to the victims." Harper's eyes flicked to her, narrowing. "What do you mean?" Rachel looked at the case file, her finger tracing a line from the victims to Blackwell's name. "We believe he's been orchestrating these disappearances for years. And now, somehow, the abandoned house is connected to him." Harper's mind was reeling. He had a suspect, but he needed proof. "We need to get to him, Rachel," he said, his voice cold. The next day, Harper and Rachel arrived at a high-rise building in the city, Blackwell's headquarters. The glass exterior gleamed in the early morning sun, but Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. They walked through the pristine lobby, the cold marble floors echoing beneath their feet. Rachel seemed unsettled, glancing around as they moved deeper into the building. "This doesn't feel right," she murmured. Harper didn't answer. He was too focused on what lay ahead. The elevator ride was tense, the silence between them thick with anticipation. When the doors finally opened, they stepped into a luxurious office space with expansive windows offering a view of the city. Blackwell's assistant greeted them with a tight smile, leading them to his office. But as they walked, Harper couldn't shake the sense that they were being watched. Every step felt deliberate, every movement under scrutiny. They were being led into the lion's den. Inside Blackwell's office, the air was thick with tension. The assistant ushered them into a plush room, where Martin Blackwell stood waiting. He was a tall, well-groomed man in his mid-50s, dressed in an expensive suit. His face was calm, almost too calm, but his eyes betrayed something darker, an unsettling coldness. "Detective Harper, Officer Wilson. I've been expecting you," Blackwell said, his voice smooth and authoritative. Harper didn't take his eyes off him. "We have some questions about your connection to the recent disappearances." Blackwell smiled, a thin, practiced smile. "I'm afraid you've been misinformed. I'm just a businessman. These are baseless accusations." Harper stepped forward, his voice low. "People don't disappear for no reason, Blackwell. And we'll find out what you're hiding." Blackwell's smile never wavered. "I'm sure you will," he said, his tone polite but chilling. Detective Harper and Officer Rachel Wilson stood before the house again, its dark silhouette looming against the gray sky. The rain had started, a steady drizzle that seemed to seep into their bones. Harper looked at the house, his eyes narrowing. "This place, it's more than just a crime scene, Rachel," he said quietly. "It's a symbol, a trigger. Someone's been using it to send a message." Rachel glanced at the structure, her face shadowed by the overcast sky. "But what message? Who's it for?" Harper shook his head, frustration mounting. "I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. We can't let this slip through our fingers." He turned to her, determination in his eyes. "We're missing something, Rachel. The victims, Blackwell, the house, it's all connected. We need to dig deeper." Rachel nodded, her voice steady, but with a hint of concern. "I'll go over the files again. You think it's someone from Blackwell's past?" Harper didn't answer immediately. "Could be," he muttered. "But it feels older, deeper. I think it's been here for a long time, waiting to resurface." Inside the house once again, Harper and Rachel stepped cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. The dust was thick in the air, the remnants of a forgotten past. Harper moved toward the back room, a place they hadn't searched before. His flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing faded wallpaper and broken furniture. "It's like the place is stuck in time," Rachel commented, her voice muffled by the dust. Harper nodded, his eyes scanning the room. "It's not just abandoned, it's abandoned for a reason. Someone wanted it forgotten." As he continued moving through the room, he stopped at an old wooden cabinet. His flashlight revealed something hidden inside, a collection of old, yellowed photographs. He picked one up, studying it closely. It was a picture of the house, taken years ago, but with a disturbing detail, figures in the background that looked all too familiar. "This isn't just a house, Rachel," Harper murmured. "It's a graveyard of secrets." The photograph in Harper's hand seemed to pulse with significance. He studied the figures in the background, faces obscured by shadows, yet something about them felt unnervingly familiar. "This could be what we've been missing," he said, showing Rachel the photo. She leaned over, her breath caught in her throat as she recognized the faint silhouette of a man in the background. "It's Blackwell," Rachel whispered. Harper's eyes met hers, a deep understanding passing between them. "It's him, or someone close to him," he muttered. "We need to find out who these people are." Rachel nodded, reaching for her phone. "I'll send this to forensics. We might get a hit." Harper pocketed the photograph. "We need to track down anyone who's been involved with Blackwell in the past. We're getting closer, Rachel. I can feel it." They exchanged a determined glance, knowing they were on the verge of uncovering something far bigger than they had anticipated. "Let's go," Harper said, his voice firm. The forensics team worked late into the night, trying to find any trace of the figures in the photograph. As Harper sat at his desk, a sense of impatience gnawed at him. Rachel walked in, her face grim. "We've got something," she said, holding out a file. Harper looked up, his pulse quickening. "What is it?" Rachel opened the file and placed it in front of him. The photo wasn't just of Blackwell. It's of a group of people from his past. There's a name we didn't expect to find. Someone who vanished years ago, Evelyn Foster. Harper's eyebrows shot up. Evelyn Foster, he repeated, his mind racing. Rachel nodded. She was tied to the house, just like the others. She disappeared in the 1980s, and her connection to Blackwell is more than just business. Harper's eyes narrowed. She was part of his inner circle, and now she's dead. This is no coincidence. Rachel's voice softened. Harper, what if this is all connected? What if Blackwell's not just hiding something, but erasing people who know too much? Harper stood up abruptly. We need to find out who else is involved before they disappear too. Harper and Rachel stood at the entrance of the Foster family estate, the large, imposing gates creaking in the wind. The mansion loomed in front of them, its architecture as dark and foreboding as the secrets it housed. Evelyn Foster was connected to Blackwell, but what does that mean for us? Rachel asked, her voice uncertain. Harper's gaze remained fixed on the house. It means we're about to uncover a lot more than we bargained for, he replied. They made their way up the long, overgrown path toward the mansion. The rain had started again, drenching the ground beneath their feet. The air smelled of wet earth and decay, adding to the eerie atmosphere. As they reached the door, Harper hesitated, his hand on the doorknob. Ready? Rachel asked. Harper didn't answer immediately. Let's go. We need to know what she knew. The door creaked open, revealing the dark interior of the house, and they stepped inside, ready to face whatever awaited them. Harper and Rachel stepped cautiously through the grand, yet decaying entrance of the Foster mansion. The air was thick with dust, each breath heavy with the stench of abandonment. The house seemed frozen in time, trapped between memories and secrets. They moved silently, the floorboards creaking under their weight, as they navigated the narrow hallways. This place feels wrong, Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible over the echoing silence. Harper didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on a door at the end of the hallway. The answers are in here, he muttered, a grim determination in his tone. As they reached the door, Harper paused, placing his hand on the handle. Ready for this? He asked, though his question was more rhetorical than anything else. Rachel nodded, though her unease was evident. With a slow turn of the knob, the door creaked open, revealing an old study filled with weathered books and forgotten memories. A sense of dread filled the room, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets. Inside the study, Harper and Rachel found themselves surrounded by old furniture, the air thick with the musty scent of aged paper. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books that had yellowed with time. Harper ran his fingers along the back of a chair, disturbed by the layer of dust that settled over everything. Whoever was here, they left in a hurry, Rachel said, scanning the room. Harper nodded, his eyes falling on a large wooden desk, its surface cluttered with old papers. As he stepped closer, his gaze was drawn to a faded letter that seemed out of place, resting on top of a pile of documents. He carefully picked it up and unfolded it, revealing the familiar handwriting of Evelyn Foster. This was written just before she disappeared, Harper said softly, the realization setting in. She knew something, and someone didn't want her to tell it. The tension in the room grew, as the weight of their discovery began to sink in. Rachel stood beside him, her eyes narrowing. We need to find out who else was involved. Harper and Rachel sat at a small table, the letter from Evelyn Foster spread out before them. The faint sound of rain tapping against the window filled the silence. The letter mentions a meeting, Rachel said, her voice low as she traced the words with her finger. A secret meeting just before Evelyn disappeared. She was planning to expose something big. Harper's mind raced. This connects everything. Blackwell, the house, the victims. Evelyn knew the truth, and she was going to tell it. He leaned back in his chair, his hand running through his hair. But someone stopped her. Rachel nodded, her eyes dark with understanding. Blackwell had the motive, but who else? Harper's gaze hardened. We're about to find out. Let's take a look at the other files, the ones we haven't gone through yet. They both stood, a shared sense of urgency in the air. Harper's eyes flicked to the door, as if expecting someone, or something, to be lurking just outside, waiting to stop them. The drive to the next location was silent, each passing streetlight flashing by in a blur of yellow and orange. Harper's hands gripped the steering wheel, his thoughts swirling with the implications of the letter. Evelyn Foster's warnings echoed in his mind. Rachel sat beside him, her arms crossed, looking out the window, lost in thought. "Do you think Blackwell had anything to do with it?" Rachel finally asked, breaking the silence. Harper sighed, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "It's not just Blackwell. There's someone else, someone we haven't identified yet. The people in that photo, the ones with Blackwell, they knew Evelyn. They knew what she was going to do." He paused, his jaw tightening. "We have to be careful, Rachel. If we're right, we're not just dealing with one person. We're dealing with a network." Rachel looked over at him, her eyes steady. "Then we'll take them all down, one by one." Harper's lips curled into a small, grim smile. "Let's get this done." Harper and Rachel arrived at a run-down warehouse on the outskirts of town. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with tension. The building loomed before them, its dark silhouette illuminated by the flashing lights of their police vehicle. "This is it," Harper said, his voice low. "The meeting place. This is where Evelyn was supposed to confront them." Rachel looked around, her instincts telling her that something wasn't right. "Let's keep our guard up," she warned, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold night air. They approached the entrance, their footsteps muffled by the wet ground beneath them. As they pushed open the door, the dim light inside revealed rows of old crates and abandoned equipment. But then they heard it, a noise in the back of the warehouse. A rustling, followed by a soft, terrified voice. "Help!" The sound echoed through the empty space. Harper's heart raced. "Stay close," he whispered. "We're not alone." Harper and Rachel slowly stepped deeper into the dark warehouse. The faint rustling echoed from the back, growing louder, the sound of something, or someone, scrambling. "It's a trap," Rachel whispered, tension rising. Harper held up a hand, signaling her to stay silent. The voice calling for help sounded desperate. "Stay sharp," he said, stepping cautiously toward the sound. The smell of mildew and oil filled the air as they approached a row of crates. Ow! Suddenly, a figure darted into the shadows, disappearing just as quickly as they had appeared. Harper's heart raced. "We've got company," he muttered, pulling his gun from its holster. "Whoever's here is trying to lure us in." The figure reappeared, silhouetted against the dim light of a distant exit. "Evelyn Foster's files," the voice called out, almost pleading. "You're too late. He's already gone." Harper's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure stepped closer, revealing a disheveled woman, her face pale and streaked with dirt. "I'm the last one," she said, trembling. "They were going to kill me, too." She paused, gasping for breath. "But I escaped." Rachel stepped forward cautiously. "You know Blackwell?" The woman nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "He'll stop at nothing to cover his tracks. But you have to stop him. He's dangerous. He's been playing all of us." Harper lowered his weapon slightly, his focus shifting to the woman. "What do you know about Blackwell?" he asked, his voice firm. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. "He's not just some businessman. He's been orchestrating disappearances for years. He controls everything, the people, the money, the power." Harper exchanged a look with Rachel. "But why Evelyn? Why now?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. She was going to expose him. She was close, too close. And when she found out, he decided it was time to make her disappear. Permanently. Harper clenched his jaw, his eyes hardening. "We're going after him. Where do we find him?" The woman hesitated, looking over her shoulder. "There's a place, a meeting spot. The docks." The docks were empty, the wind whipping across the water. Harper and Rachel approached a secluded warehouse at the end of the pier. "This is it," Harper said, his voice low. "This is where Blackwell is hiding." Rachel glanced around, scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. "This doesn't feel right," she said, her voice tense. "I can feel it." Harper nodded, tightening his grip on his weapon. "Stay alert. Blackwell's not going to go down without a fight." As they approached the warehouse, they heard a faint sound coming from inside. It was the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing. Harper motioned for Rachel to stay behind as he stepped closer, his footsteps muffled by the wet ground. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with the smell of salt water and rust. The faint sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. "Blackwell," Harper murmured, his eyes scanning the shadows. Suddenly, the figure of Martin Blackwell appeared, stepping from behind a stack of crates. His face was cold, his expression unreadable. "I see you found me," he said, his voice smooth and mocking. "But it's too late. You're too late." Harper's heart raced. "We're not done yet, Blackwell. You're going down." Blackwell smiled darkly. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning." The air crackled with tension as both men sized each other up. Rachel moved behind Harper, ready for whatever came next. "We'll see about that," Harper growled, stepping forward. The aftermath of the battle with Blackwell left the warehouse eerily quiet. Harper stood near the exit, his gun holstered, but his mind was still racing. Rachel stood beside him, staring into the distance. "We've got him," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Harper glanced at her, his expression weary. "We've got him, but it's not over," he muttered. "There's more. There's always more." Rachel shook her head, tired but resolute. "What now?" Harper looked at the sky, the sun just beginning to rise, casting a faint golden glow over the wreckage. "Now we clean up the mess. We've taken down Blackwell, but there's a network behind him, Rachel. We need to dismantle that too." He turned to face her, determination in his eyes. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Back at the station, the reality of their victory was settling in. But Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Blackwell's out of the picture," Rachel said, sitting at her desk. "But you're still not convinced, are you?" Harper's voice was low as he replied, "He's just one part of the puzzle. We've been chasing shadows, but the real threat is still out there." Rachel met his gaze. "Who do you think it is?" Harper sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Someone with more power. Someone with connections. Blackwell was the face, but I suspect there's someone pulling the strings." Rachel frowned. "We'll get to them too," she said firmly. Harper nodded. "We'll get them all." Days passed, but the investigation didn't slow down. The leads kept coming, pointing to a larger, more intricate web. Harper and Rachel sat together in the conference room, surrounded by maps and photos. "The deeper we go, the more complex it gets," Rachel said, her voice tinged with frustration. Harper nodded, tracing the connections on the map. "Tight. The more pieces we pull apart, the more we uncover. This isn't just a local operation. This is international." He leaned forward, his face etched with determination. "We're not done until every last one of them is brought down." Rachel looked at him, impressed by his resolve. "We'll finish what we started," she said, her voice steady. Harper stood up, looking out the window. "No matter the cost." The investigation reached a critical point when they received a tip about a key meeting. Harper and Rachel stood at the edge of the parking lot, overlooking the secluded building. "This is it," Harper said, his voice low. "The meeting that could break everything wide open." Rachel was quiet, her eyes scanning the area. "How do we play this?" she asked. Harper looked at her, determination in his eyes. "We go in. Quiet. We get the evidence. We don't wait for backup." Rachel hesitated but then nodded. "We'll do it your way." Harper gave her a sharp look. "We don't have a choice. The clock is ticking." They moved toward the building, their footsteps muffled on the cold asphalt. Inside the building, Harper and Rachel moved swiftly, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. They reached the central room where the meeting was supposed to happen. The door creaked open, and they were greeted by an unexpected sight, an empty room. "What the hell?" Rachel muttered. Harper motioned for her to stay quiet, his eyes scanning the room. "They knew we were coming," he said softly. Just as they began to retreat, the door slammed shut behind them, and a figure stepped out from the shadows, an unexpected ally, a former informant. "I knew you'd be here," the informant said. "You're too late. They've already moved on." Harper and Rachel walk down an empty city street. "Duh. It's over," Rachel says, but Harper feels it's not. "We've taken down Blackwell, but there's more to uncover," he replies. "One step at a time," Rachel agrees, determined. At the precinct, Rachel reviews the case files. "We've got more work ahead," Harper says, determined. "We're not done until everyone is brought down." Rachel agrees, ready to continue the fight. Harper and Rachel walk through the precinct. "There's still more to uncover," Harper says. "How many lives have been affected?" Rachel replies, "We'll make it right." They exchange a quiet understanding. Harper and Rachel arrive at the docks for the final phase of the investigation. "This is where it ends," Harper says. "We're not stopping now," Rachel responds, resolute. The criminals are arrested, and the case is finally closed. "It's over," Rachel says, relieved. "But the damage is done," Harper replies. "We'll make sure it doesn't happen again."